I want to welcome everyone to this morning's meeting of the Tacoma-Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. Hopefully that's the meeting you thought you were showing up for. If not, we're sorry to disappoint you. Let's go ahead and get started with an introduction. And Rosemary, would you like to get us going?
Thank you, Rob, and thanks everyone for listening to me these mornings when I say things I'm thinking about. And I want to welcome everybody here to our gathering where we connect with each other and we learn from each other and we work together to end the humanitarian crisis of homelessness in our communities. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe who have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. And beyond this awareness, we call ourselves to uplift the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. Today, if you got to look at the agenda, you'll know that we'll hear about new opportunities to use our voices to demand, encourage, question, call ourselves to action. We'll identify needs for more creative housing policies, hear about shelter developments, learn about new possibilities to increase safe parking spaces, and we'll talk about best ways to advocate for change. We do something like this every week, and I know I gain very much every time we gather and appreciate the chance to reflect briefly with you on the meanings and the challenges that we face in this mobilization to end homelessness. Today, I've been thinking about that word advocacy, and the word variously means to summon, to call to one's aid, to plead in favor of, to recommend, or to support. And sometimes it can also mean to witness silently through presence, or more strongly, to resist in action, even in disobeying laws. Unfortunately, for our common life as citizens, it can also mean clashing rhetorics and insufferable spins on reality. So what does being an advocate mean for me? What do I actually do, and what does that action make of me? I've never thought of myself as having much personal ambition, and I'm sometimes living out how writer E.B. White describes his own experience when he says, "I arise in the morning torn between a desire to improve or save the world and a desire to enjoy or savor the world, and this makes it hard to plan the day." My most common experience, though, is waking each day alert to that first desire to improve the world. Empathy does propel advocacy, and I know I'm implicated in the things being as they are, that my privilege still shapes my ability to see and to respond. And I know I could use my voice more passionately. Like strengthening our core muscles requires physical exercise, strengthening our advocacy muscles requires speaking more and taking the deeper personal risks that this moment requires, being really open to the pain, being open to inevitable conflicts with others, and demanding a different world. Today, I'm inspired by Nelson Mandela's claim that, as he says, there is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that is less than the one you're capable of living. So may we all live large. So those are my thoughts. And now here we are. And we have some new folks probably here today. If you're new or coming back after a while, you may not know what we're up to here, but we want to start by first letting you know a little bit of our rules for our time together. We do ask that you use the raise hand function on the Zoom call if you want to get to have attention paid to your thoughts. That you also keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. And if you're doing other things that could be distracting, to turn your video off as well. If you're calling in from somewhere and don't have the opportunity to use the raise hand, do whatever you need to do to get attention. We'll try to pay attention to you. We also use the chat for networking, and we save the chat, and you can save it yourself. But ask questions there. Sometimes we don't have enough time because we may end up with 40 or 50 or 60 folks. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, but it doesn't quite fit the agenda or doesn't quite fit the time frame, well, just put it in the chat and somebody will respond, because we all do that. Put your names and contact information, groups you're part of, announcements about events that are coming up, whatever kinds of things you'd like to share with the right now 43 people who are here. Just put them there and we'll be happy to see them. And also, then when you, I had another thought there I was going to say. I don't remember what it was. But I guess we'll move on to having anyone who's new, just let us know who you are. If you're part of a group, just to let us know that group. This isn't a time for a longer introduction. We'll have time to talk together in breakouts a little later. So raise your hand with that raise hand function, or raise your hand physically if you can't do that. And we'd like to have you introduce yourself.
And I would say if you're on your phone and you can't either be on camera to raise your hand or use the raise hand function, you can go ahead and just unmute and introduce yourself.
Well, maybe we have mostly people who've been around a bit. Again, if you're new and this wasn't the right time for you to introduce yourself, if you'd like to make contact with others in the group, just put your name in the chat and say what you'd like to connect about, and somebody will do that. So the only last thing I'll say is we had our informal gathering last night at the 7 Seas, and that was pretty nifty. It was really a good time had by all, as they often say. And some folks were saying that because they aren't either able to have their cameras on, or they choose not to, that they were meeting people really for the first time because all they'd seen is somebody's name in the past. So anytime you can make yourself visible for us to say hello, that's great, but we appreciate everybody's choice in that matter. So welcome everyone, and Rob, back to you.
Thank you. So thank you, Rosemary. And one thing I'll reiterate from what Rosemary said, and we'll actually take a look at this a little bit later. The chat is a real resource for these meetings. We save those chat logs and transcripts and put them on the website, which we'll actually be taking a look at here in a moment. So please do use that liberally to share information. It becomes a community resource for all of us. So let's get started with our regular This Week on the Streets section of the meeting. I do want to do a little bit of a preamble on this Week on the Streets, because there's two things we hope to touch on a little bit during this segment this week. One, want to thank everyone who was able to go out and support the efforts to get water to people during the hot spell that happened last week. We were still in the midst of that last Friday when we were meeting. And then I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but we are looking at another hot spell this weekend. So folks will see when I do a quick tour of the coalition website later that we have re-enabled the hot weather resource page for folks to find out where they can get water and where there may be cooling center resources. We're not expecting this weekend's hot weather to be as long lasting, but there is the possibility of 1 or 2 days where it could be 90 degrees or more. And one of those days is Sunday. So what we have learned over the last couple of hot weather spells is over the weekends, there's not as much coverage from outreach teams to be able to get out and get water to people on the weekends. So that's where we have individuals from the coalition who can try to help fill some of that need in the meantime, while we still work to get ourselves organized. So with that big, long, rambling preamble in place, let's go ahead and get started with what folks are seeing on the streets this week, what they anticipate are the needs going into hot weather this weekend. What do you have to say? Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear from you. Jeffrey.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know how many of you saw the Como report on the 35th and Pacific encampment the other day. I talked to the campers yesterday, spent about an hour there walking around. They were really put off by Como's report on them. It was focused more on what the neighbors are saying, and there are some neighbors that are a little bit upset. But frankly, the city has not done any outreach or any, shall we say, positive talk, positive communication to the community about what they are doing or what is being planned by the city. And that might be beneficial to all of us. And frankly, the coalition probably should start talking more about what is going on. It is a bit of a problem. Although the campers at 34th and Pacific are doing quite well. They're managing their camp just fine. They're keeping the criminal element out, and they band together as a group to make sure that that happens. So the idea that the campers can lead with guidance, I think is showing in that camp. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Zoe, you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just want to message that part of that article called out that Marlene's on 38th is going to be having a meeting with a bunch of businesses and the cops to discuss crime related to the camps, and specifically to the one that's right over there. I believe it's on the 18th. It's going to be at 7:30 a.m. I know a few of us are going to try and go out there and protest. We'd love to see other folks. I know it's early, but you know that this kind of effort can't go unchecked. So yeah, hope to see you out there.
Thank you, Zoe. And ironically enough, that was on another Como news story.
Oh my God.
So Como has been blanketing Tacoma related to the issues with homelessness in our community, and concerns of businesses and neighbors of sites where folks are currently living outdoors. Other folks with things they would like to share regarding the current situation on the streets? Richard, I saw you put quite a bit of information in the chat. Would you like to say anything verbally?
I just thought it would be easier to put the text in the chat because I sort of wrote it out rather than trying to verbally do it.
Okay. Appreciate that. And that is an ongoing, it'll be an ongoing archive. So that's appreciated as well. Anyone else with updates about what they're seeing on the streets this week? Needs, concerns going into the hot weather again this weekend? Okay, so I know for me, I haven't really even been going out that much, but I can only imagine how folks are feeling with more hot weather coming. So hopefully this will be the last spell we have. I guess on the bright side, usually August is the truly hot weather sort of ends by mid-August. So if we're lucky, we will avoid 90-degree temperatures going forward, but with what's happening with the climate, who knows? Okay, so let me shift to other items on our agenda. I do have a couple of changes to the agenda that I wanted to make people aware of. For one, our community spotlight section, where we're going to talk about restarting the housing committee for the coalition. We're going to actually hold that part of the conversation later in the meeting after 10 o'clock. Adam can't join us until that time. And then the next item on the agenda, the update on the shelter project that Brotherhood Rise is doing. Gerald asked to hold off on that update this week, so we'll circle back to that here in another week or two. So with that being the situation, I am going to launch into a little bit of a tour of the pchomeless.org website. So a number of folks, even regular attendees of the coalition meetings, have not necessarily known the types of resources that are available on the PC Homeless website, pchomeless.org. So I thought it might be worthwhile to show just a quick tour on screen. So let me share my screen here. All right. So if you have never visited our website, this is the front page of pchomeless.org. We know there's a lot of text here. This is a website that really focuses on more form over how it looks at this point. It has been built thanks to a lot of volunteer effort by Garrett Nyland over the last few years. And it does serve as a centralized hub for information, especially about all of the meetings that the coalition holds every week and every month. So that's the first thing I would call attention to, is in the center of the screen here at the top of the page, you've got a running list of all of the upcoming meetings and events. There's bound to be a glitch in the system that causes the networking social hour that was yesterday to still be at the top of the list, because that happened yesterday. But you can see all of the weekly meetings that take place, the governance work group, steering committee, next week's Friday meeting. For some reason, I need to add the safe sites for all meeting for Monday, which is not on the calendar right now. So the calendar part and meeting calendar is pretty straightforward. Where people have struggled more, in just a second, let me bring up my chat screen so I can see what folks are saying. Good. Where folks have struggled a little bit more is digging deeper into the resources that are on the site. So let me give a quick tour of the recent presentations section. I always talk about how there's a lot of value in putting things in our chat. The reason that I say that is if you go over here under recent presentations and you click on the text for any of these meetings, so this is for last week's meeting, it's going to open up a separate page that shows not only a way to listen to the meeting and follow along that way, but you can view the minutes of the meeting, which is essentially kind of the transcript. You can view the chat that happened during the meeting, or you can listen to it on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube to listen to the recording, you end up with actually, and this is probably going to autoplay, so I don't want to do that. Oh, and there's my ugly mug. So this then gives you an opportunity to see the view from the speaker and essentially watch the meeting, even as if you'd want to do that. But you can definitely listen to it as well. If you go to the minutes of the entire meeting, essentially it's going to take you to an even deeper page. It shows you the agenda. It shows you essentially just bulleted notes. So the value here is if you're looking for something from a meeting, you can go here and just search for text and be able to find the exact part of the meeting where you want to look at that information. So that in particular is a real valuable thing. We also have a link to the YouTube channel for the coalition where you can watch all of our prior meetings as they're posted. Typically, each meeting is posted within a couple of days of the meeting wrapping up. So this is why we record these meetings. It's again why we ask people to use the chat. And then periodically there are things that we break out of the meetings. Timothy has been doing the summaries from the breakout sessions. Those get posted now as a separate document that you can view. And typically those are posted over the weekend after each week's meeting as well. And then sometimes there are individual presentations that are pulled out. If I scroll down the page and you go back to July 8th, we had a presentation about the qualitative assessment goals. Or actually, let's see, these are all breakout summaries. We did have one back here a little ways where we did, and we actually pulled out part of the presentation. Yeah, here's one about talking about substance use. So, so there's a lot of rich information here that you can dig into. And I do encourage you to go play around with that. This yellow portion of the page is essentially highlighting either news stories or the most recent link up here is from the end of July, the Tacoma Tent News, a link to that so that you can actually click on this link, print the Tacoma Tent News to take it out to do outreach in encampments. And then other things to pay attention to on the page, when we have inclement weather or some sort of situation going on, we enable this area that's highlighted in yellow here. I updated this morning to show that there is a weather forecast for heat over the weekend. And I mentioned the hot weather resources page. This is something that I update that's outside of the basic coalition site. But when I click on that, it opens a page that has just some bare bones information about where folks can go get water, for instance, where there are cooling centers open, if there are cooling centers open, and then information that's really critical from the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department around how to recognize when people are experiencing things like heat exhaustion. So these, you can click on each one and it'll show you a larger version on screen, and you can also print those. So let's go back to the website. Other things that I would highlight on the website. Obviously, many of you have already used the listserv link to go subscribe to the various listservs, the email lists that the coalition offers. You can click on whichever ones you want here. You can also put your email in and unsubscribe if you need to do that. There is a members section. It hasn't been updated for a while, but this is a number of organizations that are that have been part of the coalition. And then resources. We have had actually James Pogue from Comprehensive Life Resources do an update about this relatively recently. But when you click on this page, it gives you an opportunity to, if you hit need help, actually, I think you hit resources, it walks you through options to try to help you locate the resources in the community that would be helpful for your situation. So that is definitely worth exploring. And then the other things here, Safe Sites for All goes to the outside site for Safe Sites for All. Showers and day center information. Overnight shelter is the page that Garrett keeps updated. You'll notice that shelter providers provide periodic, not every day, updates of how many beds are available at a given shelter. And then coordinated entry locations. We talked about this for a couple of weeks there where we were talking about coordinated entry, and in particular about the value of the walk-in spaces where people can get coordinated entry rather than calling 211. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there. I wanted to ask folks if there are questions they have about the website, anything that they we actually talked a little bit here recently about things that need to be added to the website. So anything that people would like to share or suggest for improvements, let's take a couple of moments for that, and then we'll move on to other agenda items. You all are just tired of hearing me talk, aren't you? All right. Thank you for that. Hopefully it's useful. I did see your note, Stacy, about the resource page being really helpful. And I'm glad to hear that you're sharing that with other case managers. That's fantastic. And I will have to take a look at the Emerald City Resource Guide. I have not perused that, so I'll take a look at it. I would be shocked if Garrett has not perused that. So, Rosemary.
I just wanted to say that we're thinking of ways to update people's ability to access the information about agencies that may be doing work with each other and would like to collaborate more. So we'll be asking you in the near future to provide us with a little information, especially if you're looking for people to join your work as volunteers, because there are a lot of folks who join the coalition's meetings and aren't quite sure where to plug into things that they could really make a contribution to doing if they knew which resource to go to. So that's not for today, but I'll be presenting this from the governance work group when we get a little more clear about it. We'd like that to be available for people on the webpage more clearly.
Thank you, Rosemary. And really, this webpage is meant to be a tool and a resource, and we want to make it as useful as possible for everyone on the coalition. If you do have suggestions, please let us know. I can't say enough about the how much effort that Garrett, who I see has joined us, has put into the website, and appreciate that he lets me play in the garden a little bit with updating things. We know that there's always room for improvement. So please let us know if there's things that need to be changed. All right. So anyone else with any questions or comments? And I'm not begging, but. All right. So let's move on with the rest of our meeting. Why don't we shift to the advocacy update that I was going to give this morning? And I do ask Sally if you have anything that you want to weigh in and update as well. That'd be helpful. I did peruse the Tacoma City Council calendar for this coming week. There is nothing on the study session specifically related to homelessness and housing. However, again, I do remind people that noon meeting on Tuesdays, it is good to, if you have the time, to have it on in the background to listen to the other items of interest that happen at the end of the meeting. So there is some value there. I also wanted to let people know that on Tuesday evening, there is community forum during the meeting, and an opportunity there to encourage the city to do things like not do sweeps during the middle of heat and bad weather situations, which that came up during an outreach teams meeting hosted by Pierce County earlier this week, that the challenges that are caused by sweeps happening in the midst of either a hot spell, bad rainstorm, winter weather, those kinds of things. So there's an opportunity to testify in front of the city council if you would like, and advocate to have the city show a little bit of humanity during those situations. As I always say, the Tacoma City or the Pierce County Council is their meeting agendas for next week will be posted later this afternoon. But I see Sally just had her hand pop up, so maybe she had something to add.
Well, the implementation advisory board for the plan, the comprehensive plan to end homelessness meets this afternoon. And
This
the
is
agenda
correct.
is now up. And members of the public are welcome to watch. And there's usually a brief time at the end for public testimony. So that's one option. But back to the city for a minute. The Community Vitality and Safety Committee this week is going to be interviewing people for the TACID board. That's the Tacoma Area Coalition of Individuals with Disabilities. And it occurred to me as I was looking at that, we should be advocating for all of these city boards for people who have lived experience being unhoused, and in this case may also be living with a disability, to apply for those committees so that the perspective of unhoused people can be part of that larger conversation. So obviously people have already applied. It's too late to do it on this one. But when you see the alerts for the cities wants people to apply for this board or that commission or whatever, think about whether that's a relevant place for a person with lived experience living unhoused to be encouraged to apply to bring that perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Sally. And I did drop the link for the comprehensive plan to end homelessness. That goes to the general page for the plan. You can scroll down the page and see the information for the implementation advisory board, including a link to the full meeting packet for this afternoon's meeting. That meeting packet includes some dashboards that are really interesting. So I do encourage folks to go take a look at that page. And if you can, do attend the meeting this afternoon from 1 to 3. The highlight of today's meeting includes the consultant that has been selected by the county for doing the first goal of the strategic plan is creating a regional approach to handling homelessness. And so the kickoff of that project begins today. So if you do have the opportunity to listen in, this should be a meaty meeting again this afternoon between 1 and 3. Any advocacy related questions from folks? And Garrett, anything you would add about this afternoon's meeting of the implementation advisory board?
Nope, I think you nailed it.
Okay, good. Thanks. All right. So that brings us to an opportunity to talk about and review the breakout conversation from last week. So Timothy, would you be interested in sharing that? And I could put it on screen.
Let me think about it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure glad.
Just a second. Let me throw my notes. All right. I won't. I'll do it later. Hang on. I'm confusing myself here.
That's because I sprung this on you a little bit earlier than the agenda than you're ready.
No, that's not it. Anyway, I'm beyond my confusion. So we had a lot of discussion in the 10 minutes we had last week about this, and I broke it into basically 3 categories. There was a set of ideas around broadening the conversations and participation in the coalition. There was a list of recommended areas of interest to explore, and then there was a list of 14 specific groups for the community spotlight that people brought up that they would like to hear from. So in terms of broadening the conversations and participation, there were a couple of panel ideas that people were interested in. I know that that wouldn't happen during the call, but maybe some other forum. People were interested in some panels of like electeds, government officials to have a broad discussion around homelessness, and another of having a panel around neighbors of campsites, what might be helpful to them to mitigate some of the issues that they're facing. People were interested in hearing more from, the other side, cops, people who are dealing with the encampments, communities and businesses impacted by encampments, focus on, again, the same sort of idea, people who are not present, at least regularly, representatives of hospitals, American Leadership Forum came up, authors of books that are to the point, newer city council members, general participation of communication leads for the county and city, and trying to loop them in more. There was a bunch of recommended areas of interest to explore. We never tire of hearing Garrett talk about coordinated entry. More of that, please. We want more in-depth info on the county, from the county around the comprehensive plan and stuff like that. Kind of a plea for more engagement around that. The ever popular expropriation taxation, wanna look at that strategy more. Some thoughts on talking more about homeless individual rights. That actually comes up a couple of times in here. Peer-led spotlight, kind of an interesting idea to explore. Speaking more to system gaps and how those might be closed. Some talk about hearing more from people in the mental health field. Hearing more about what is working in other areas, other cities. That is a question I used to get a lot. Are there any cities out there that are doing it right? Not really, but hearing more from them anyway. And again, the sort of know your rights segment. And then there's the 14 groups that were specifically called out that we might want to hear from in the community spotlight. Some of them are repeating favorites that we just want to hear from regularly. And some of them are folks that we haven't heard so much from in the past. And I won't walk you through that list. You can read that yourself. And then there was a kind of a secondary question to last week that we've talked about this morning. People didn't really engage with that part of the question, but there were a couple of suggestions that are included here in the notes about things to add on the website. And that, my
Awesome.
friends, is the summary.
Thank you again, Timothy. And thank you everyone for the valuable information. So what we will do with this information is, you always hear me say at the end of these meetings that we will have a group of us planning topics for upcoming coalition meetings. Well, you just help do a lot of the work for us. So we appreciate it, and we'll use this as kind of a guide to help fulfill what y'all would like to hear about. So let's segue into this week's breakout conversation. So we talk a lot about advocacy. I gave my update already with help from Sally. Rosemary spoke about advocacy earlier. It's a common topic that comes up, and it's one that where members of this coalition do have the power to actually change the conversation and influence decision makers so that policy will change. And one of the questions that we're curious about is, how can we make it easier to make our voices heard in advocacy? And to kind of seed this conversation, please share in the breakout groups what kind of advocacy interests you the most. We'd love to hear your ideas and see if we can plumb that list of ideas to come up with some engaging ways that this group can amplify our collective voices and make an impact. So I will send us into our familiar 4 to 5 person breakouts, and we will spend the next 15 minutes discussing the topic. I will post the topic in the in a message to everybody, and we will come back here at about 9:50. Well, yeah, 9:57ish or so. So away we go, and have a good conversation. And please, someone take notes.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was some good conversation about how we can, how we want to better engage with advocacy. So please, as always, if the note taker from each room could paste your notes into the chat, that would be great. That gives Timothy the tools he needs, the material he needs to work his magic with a summary that we'll review during next week's meeting. So why don't we shift over to do our regular government updates? I don't believe Caleb from the city of Tacoma is joining us here today. Let's see. No, but he did send me a couple of those, so let me highlight those. And I should have prepped this earlier. Let's see. So what Caleb shared with me is 2 things. One is related to the inclement weather that's coming this weekend, the hot temperatures that we spoke about twice earlier in the meeting. He wanted to let the coalition know that last week, with the hot weather that took place, 28,000 bottles of water were picked up from the stability site. And that's through Sunday of last weekend. Also, a number of folks also use that water at the cooling centers during that week as well. The usage at the different cooling centers, the Lighthouse Center down in the south end of town had 16 folks who used it. Brotherhood Rise in the Hilltop had 77 people who used it. In terms of the upcoming weather that's anticipated this weekend, there are 20 pallets of water at the stability site that can be picked up by outreach teams and individuals from the coalition if they're interested. In anticipation of the Sunday and Monday heat, they're opening the stability site Saturday for pickup from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then Caleb also asked me, he wants to do a presentation on an upcoming coalition meeting regarding the city's homelessness strategy. So that's something that we'll see coming up here soon. I again urge folks to go to pchomeless.org and click on the hot weather resources page to find information about where water is staged and how you can access that water if you want to hand out water to people who are hot over this weekend. So let's shift now to Jeff Rogers from Pierce County Human Services. Jeff, what do you have to share with us?
Good morning. We have 2 funding opportunities that will be released hot off the press as soon as possible. One is one we've mentioned recently, the COC or Continuum of Care Notice of Funding that's available. It's a supplemental amount of money that HUD is awarding nationally, and HUD is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I try not to use acronyms, or if I do, to identify what they are. So HUD has released that notice, that funding opportunity notice, and Pierce County is eligible to apply for up to just over $5 million for that funding allocation. A second allocation of money is our continuum of care, which also comes from HUD, routine annual funding competition that HUD goes through. They released that on Monday. So we're now in the process of attempting to release 2 funding opportunities, one being the COC supplemental and one being the COC routine annual NOFA funding opportunity. Combined, they're worth between $9 and $10 million investment, and they target specific interventions of permanent housing, which are our permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless with disabilities, and our rapid rehousing programs. Supportive service only projects and HMIS or homeless management information system projects are also eligible, but the priority that's been established by the local continuum of care is permanent housing projects, both the permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. We encourage agencies to apply. The continuum of care routine annual funding is more competitive, I would say, at this time, because there are renewal projects that apply for those funding dollars. The COC supplemental funding, there are no renewals, so that funding is competitive, but you'll be competing all against new projects, not existing projects who sometimes, depending on how they perform, tend to score higher and get awarded renewal funding. So those are coming up very, very soon. There's a very, very short turnaround. HUD does not give a lot of time to submit these materials to them. And so we're going to hopefully have these materials out soon. And, you know, some of the anticipation is that there will only be like 3 weeks to respond to these. We apologize for that. But HUD only gives us 90 days to do this work. 60 days for the COC. And they have requirements of certain things happening within 15 days of submitting and 30 days of submitting. So that really only gives us like 30 days to prepare the materials, get them out to the community for the community to respond based on HUD's timeline. We apologize if there's any issues with that. We will be holding bidders workshops or application workshops that will be in the notice that we release, that where you can obtain those materials and apply for those funds. That's what I have. It's overwhelming actually right now, but that's what I have.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And one question, can you post just kind of a brief summary of that information to the coalition mailing list when those become available?
We will post that though, where you can find those documents.
Sure.
If you want to apply on our website. We as county employees are not able to, once we post those documents, talk about those programs, provide any insight, any information. We are silent. There will be a question and answer time in the process with a deadline to submit questions if you have them, and we will respond to them. And at the bidders conference / application workshop, we will entertain questions and respond to them at that time. But outside of those 2 opportunities, we cannot discuss these 2 funding competitions.
Got it. So we'll just make sure we post about it on the coalition mailing list so it has a broader reach than just the website. Thanks.
Yeah, and if you want to ask a question about it before it's released, I'm more than welcome to have a conversation. But once we post those documents to our website and post a notice in the Tacoma News Tribune that these funds are available, we are in a silent mode until applications are received.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Anyone with questions for Pierce County Human Services? All right. So let's shift now to Valerie. Any updates on Pierce County rental assistance?
Morning. So the portal is closed. So if you have someone who is in need of assistance, it is too late to apply. They need to go find other resources in the community. Unfortunately, there's just no exceptions. I got about 3 emails today. And so that just everyone's on the same page. It's not something we have control over. The portal's closed. We have enough applications for the money that we have remaining, so we will not be reopening it. We are still anticipating releasing our notice of funding availability here very soon. I finalized another draft yesterday. It's to leadership. So we encourage folks to apply. We will also be having a bidders conference or an applications conference for folks in a Q&A session. So we'll encourage you to utilize those resources and ask all the questions you can at those events. And then we'll be posting the same protocols as Jeff just described so perfectly. And so we will have first year, it looks like about $8 million because we have some ARPA funds, some American Rescue Plan dollars through Garrett's plan that we're including in this notice of funding availability. So be on the lookout for that here very, 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 very soon. I will email it to the coalition's listserv as well as everything else we can just to make sure all the providers know what's available to apply for.
Great. Thank you, Valerie. Let's see. Jenny from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. What do you have to share with us this week?
Hi, everybody. Can anybody not hear me? I don't usually use headphones, so all good.
Yeah, something's up with your mic. It sounds like you're under the sea.
Okay, give me a minute.
How's SpongeBob doing?
You hear me now?
Yeah, we can. That's much better.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was actually trying to enjoy the sunshine, and there's like somebody outside power washing their driveway. So that doesn't work. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give quick updates on COVID and monkeypox. We are continuing to see COVID in the community, kind of doing this, just going along. Case rates, as I've said before, is not a very reliable thing to look at if you like to look at data because of reporting of testing. So we look more at the hospitalization rate as a measure of how well we're doing. And we saw a small increase, less than 10% increase in hospitalizations recently. There is a new vaccine available called Novavax, which uses a different technology than Moderna and Pfizer. So it's not an mRNA vaccine. It uses sort of a more time-tested protein-based technology like hepatitis B, HPV vaccination. So we are hoping that people who've been hesitant about mRNA, that never rolls off the tongue, vaccine might choose to get this vaccine. If you need more information, I can share a link about that. But our TPCHD static and mobile clinics have this vaccine for folks that want to opt for that option. It's been a long week, sorry. Working with 7 shelters and day centers to plan COVID vaccine clinics while we still have funding and support for a COVID vaccine and other activities. Had a nice event at TRM, at Tacoma Rescue Mission, on the 3rd, 2 days ago. 4 more people got vaccinated, so that's always great. And we do have the capacity to do more. I'm reaching out to shelters, but if you're part of an organization and you'd like to explore that, let me know. We have 8 cases of monkeypox in Pierce County right now. Our work right now is really focused on working with community partners to provide vaccine opportunities for folks who are at high risk. And right now that's only people who've been exposed or at high risk for being exposed, in particular men who have sex with men and those social and sexual networks. So we're working with community partners that already work in that community to reach folks. I'm going to share several resources about monkeypox in the chat. Excuse me. Continuing to just let outreach teams and shelters know how to, do general infection control and those kinds of things, because we definitely don't want to have any sort of outbreak in a congregate or an encampment setting. I would love to hear from you if you have questions, if you're hearing questions from other people that we can help answer, and would love to know if you are a group that works with folks who are doing sex work or or know of agencies that we might not be aware of that are doing that work, because the best way to stop the spread of this is to find folks who've been exposed, do contact tracing, and really stop it in its tracks. And I'm here to take questions if you have any.
Appreciate that, Jenny. Zoe, you had your hand up there briefly. Did you have a question?
I was going to mention the sex work stuff. Thanks,
Okay.
Jenny.
Yeah. Thanks, Z.
Good.
Anybody else?
Jay.
Hi, Jay.
I understand that certain aspects of the community are being strongly affected more than others. On the other hand, there's been a lot of concern about the bias created by just bringing up that social interaction.
Yep.
So just remember that it is not a gay thing,
right,
or a just man thing. It is a contact thing.
That's right.
And that is the important thing to remember. And that is, it's just a reminder. It's not trying to stir the pot, but it has been something that has been brought up as a major concern.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I really appreciate that reminder. I admittedly can sometimes stumble over my own words in talking about these things. It is a really, really nuanced thing to talk about in terms of who is at risk, but not slipping into stigmatizing any particular group. So thank you for saying that, and something we continue to think about and in our messaging be cautious of. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny. And I saw news coverage that at least in King County that that monkeypox has been essentially doubling every week. Are we seeing that here in Pierce County as well?
I don't think the numbers show that that's the rate at which it's been increasing here. We've been, I mean, I think we're at 8 right now. And yeah, I don't think it's going that fast. But
okay.
We were at 3 for a couple weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, we were pretty steady at 3 or 4, I think, for a few weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, it has doubled from that, but I don't think doubling every week is accurate.
Is the rate
at this point? Yeah.
Got it. Patricia, your hand's up.
Yeah, that got into a different conversation. My understanding, it's less than 7,000 nationally, but King County does have a higher rate. I was going to ask Jenny if there's any, I have the link for King County in regards to monkeypox, but is there a link for information because it's becoming a newsworthy thing that people can look for the information? I just was going to ask.
Yeah.
That, so.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I can't usually talk and drop things in the chat at the same time. I'm just not that coordinated. So after I give my report out, I tend to dump a bunch of links. So yeah, we have a general population TPCHD monkeypox page, which right at the top shows the number of cases in Pierce County, so local, and then has some general information that links, of course, CDC information is relevant in terms of spread and infection control and on all of that general information. But our page will show the case count. So I'll share that resource.
Thank you, Jenny. And Zoe, your hand's up again.
Yeah. Direct response to that, there will be a pretty thorough FAQ on that page shortly.
Oh, great.
It's on my desk to edit today.
Awesome. Thanks, colleague.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Oh, I just wanted to go in a little bit to the conversation about stigma and targeting communities and all of that, and the language that we're using. I think the thing that is making it most difficult to talk about is we have priority tiers for vaccine that are not done at our level, they're done at the national level. And those are specifically focused on men who have sex with men and their larger community. But in general, as we're talking about this to the public, it's very important for us to remind people that, this just happened to be the group that it got spread to, because these like gay people spend a lot of time with other gay people. But very specifically, it's not a gay disease. It's not a sexual, it's not an STI.
Right.
It is, you know, spread through many types of contact. And as cases increase, people outside of that community will be more and more exposed.
Yeah.
We've already seen a lot of rhetoric online and stuff from folks saying that, you know, a couple kids in New York got it from like a family, you know, used the same towel, I think was the method there that they figured out. But so there's a lot of the rhetoric that's already so common around like grooming, and queer and trans people abusing kids. So it's so important that, you know, as we're talking to the public, making it clear that anyone can get this. You know, it's hot, it's summer. People have the potential to be exposed at the gym, you know, at any public place where physical contact, especially physical contact with shared fabric of any kind, is the real method, and that people need to be mindful of not jumping the gun and getting vaccine that is not allocated to them yet because we don't have the supply. But that they should still be practicing safety measures, protecting themselves, trying to keep stuff under control. And if anyone is talking about this and has any questions about specific language, please feel free to reach out. Yeah, I'll stop rambling.
Definitely appreciate that. And Patricia, your hand's up again, or is it still up from before?
No, it was just quickly on that if you do get tested and it does come up, to relieve like suffering and symptoms, to actually go through the protocols as soon as possible. That was all. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Jenny. Look forward to the updates and links you'll put in the chat. And I know you have been sending out Friday emails to the list, and those are really, really helpful. So thank you for that. All right. Do we have anybody? I didn't see anyone from Pierce County Emergency Management on the call, but just wanted to create some space in case there is someone. All right. Doesn't sound like it. So let's move on with the rest of our agenda. Let's see here. I don't see Adam yet on the call.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Why am I not seeing you in the listing? That's odd.
He's not named.
Oh, got it. Well, so let's go ahead and go to that item on the agenda, and that's our community spotlight for this week. We wanted to have a quick update from Adam about the idea of restarting the coalition's housing committee. So Adam, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Rob?
Yeah, you just come across as Rihanna, so I think I'm going to change your name.
Do I really?
Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay, so my name is Adam Reichenberger. I use he, him pronouns. I'm familiar with a number of you folks on this call, but just to refamiliarize yourself, I am the Housing Policy Coordinator with Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. Relatively new position that started last March. So I spent a lot of time within this coalition trying to support that intersection between upstream housing policy and homelessness. And when I joined the coalition, one of my first introductions to the work we were doing was through a housing work group that the coalition had at one point. And I think there's probably been a few iterations of it. But we just kind of, that group its most recent iteration kind of went on hiatus towards the end of last year. Maureen Howard was the leader of that group and the main driving force behind it, and she had to step away. So we kind of flailed for a second without that excellent leadership, and now we're just trying to kind of reform and see how we can advance that work. In the past, this group was focused on housing for folks with incomes in the 0 to 30% of area median income. We had discussed as kind of highlighted current policy that is impacting this housing, kind of the hurdles folks are coming into, some of the changes in policy and how that's going to impact our providers, what we can be advocating for. We went over a lot of updates on those local government housing decisions. So things like where we're talking about the Affordable Housing Action Strategy, the Pierce County's Affordable Housing Work Group, and how that intersects and impacts the folks that we're working with here. It's also been a space to help form some of our advocacy positions, and whether that becomes an official advocacy position for the coalition, that would be some discussion, but it also helps inform our own individual organizations and our own personal advocacy positions as we move out of the coalition into our day-to-day lives. It can be a really valuable place to share information, to learn about things that are happening around us, whether it's changes in codes or changes in taxes or new community land trusts that are popping up and things like that. So in kicking this off, just trying to recruit folks, see who's interested in joining. Everybody's welcome if you're interested in this space. If you live in this space or have lived in that space, whether you're working in it, so providers, advocates, policymakers, government liaisons, just community members who have an interest in housing itself, certainly encourage you to participate. My thought is to send out an email following this to the coalition listserv, asking for interested folks, and then either sending out a doodle poll just to those folks, or I'll probably just talk to Rob and see if we should do a doodle poll in the initial email. But that I think that sums it up. So
Great. I think it's
hopefully,
go ahead.
yeah, hopefully I can get some more folks to join me.
Good. Yeah, I think it's very timely. Of course, my work life shifted so that I'm working for the Low Income Housing Alliance, and so I can be there not only because of an interest this time, but because it relates to my work. The previous iteration of the committee met on Thursday afternoons, late afternoon. So we may want to float that as a potential, but we could. I like the idea of sending out a message to the full mailing list, asking for people who are interested, and then once we hear from folks, then considering a doodle poll or just a quick poll like that. And yes, Sally, we could definitely record the meetings so that folks can watch if they can't attend in person.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, in the past too, there was also a separate listserv specific to the housing group. So folks who are interested in keeping up with it but don't have the available time could still kind of keep up with what we were going to be discussing and what kind of things were on the agendas.
Yeah, and I think that listserv still, yes, it does still exist on the pchomeless.org website. So if you are hearing this conversation and you want to join that listserv, you can do that just by visiting the site and going to the listserv link at the top of the page, because we will definitely utilize that as a tool. So any questions for Adam? All right. Thank you for stepping up, Adam, and we'll look forward to the message and these meetings getting restarted.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So next on our agenda, we have update for the Safe Sites for All committee. Any committee members who would like to offer an update? Much of what we talked about during the last Monday's meeting at noon was regarding the hot weather response. We had just come out of the hot weather at that point. But we also had brief updates on safe parking. So any other members of the Safe Sites for All committee who would like to offer any further updates than that? Jan is out right now on vacation, thankfully, and so couldn't be here for an update, but we will have a meeting this upcoming Monday at noon, and anyone who has an interest is encouraged to attend. Paula.
Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to briefly update you that there was a code investigation at one of the code violation at one of the sites, our biggest site, the one that's been longest running. And I had a chance to talk with the code department in reference to what they were seeing. And one of the complaints, and we don't know who it was from actually, but probably a neighbor or somebody, was saying that there were tents up, that people were sleeping in their cars, and which of course is what safe parking is for, is the sleeping in your cars. And the location that got it, they actually have a cook tent that has places where people can sit. It has a little mini fridge. It has everything in there. So I'm not sure if that was what the tent was or not, but I got a great chance to talk to the coding department, and I believe she is actually going to come out and take a look at it. The other thing that they're looking for, and we got this huge list that they use, and what part of this complaint was that there were quote unquote junk vehicles on the property. Now, I don't know about you, but I drive a car that is less than, or that is more than 3 years old. That's one of the criteria for a junk vehicle. Damage in three, it has to have damage in 3 places. So if you got a dent in your fender and you have a crack in your windshield and there's a dent in the back of the hatch or something like that, that could be considered a junk vehicle as well. So, I did get educated quite a bit and learned some things on that, but I did explain to her that most of our safe parking guests do not drive the newest version of a Maserati and sleep in that when they're in the safe parking site. So it was quite, it was educational, I think, and she understood that, was really great to work with. So my hope is that we will have some, a little bit more understanding. And then one other thing that I will mention is in conversations about another opportunity, one of the main people in the coding planning department indicated that there would be a problem with the civic site because civic sites were not allowed in the new ordinance. And I let the other person know that that's not true, because in the ordinance, it says there can be up to 4 civic sites. And this is the one that they're putting out. So I'm hoping that that means that that is what it is. So I feel like maybe some people need to be educated on their own ordinance. So it'll be, I'll keep you guys posted on that, but I think I'm the one that's going to end up maybe talking to people about that. So
yeah, let us know if you need some sort of support, and especially if we need to create some sort of simple handout to help educate people, that might be worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Jeffrey, I see your hand up, and then Ryan.
Yeah, the way I understand it, and I could be totally off base here, that because of the addition of the civic sites, which is not in HB 1754, that they were only going to do this on a temporary basis through September and then re-look at it again after that. That's how I remember reading about that. So I think they're trying to stay within the guidelines of the state law and at the same time trying to figure out where the civic organization fits into the whole thing. Again, I may be wrong, but that's how I heard it.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And Ryan?
Just a request for Paula, especially if this is the first time that you've dealt with coding, is to kind of gauge their outlook. You know, if they're trying to help and trying to make it work, or they're trying to find fault and trying to shut it down, would be of use. And also when dealing with other agencies, it's, and you probably know this, it's, you know, if you try to help them and make their job easier, then they'll be sympathetic to you. And, you know, you're not the squeaky wheel, you're the one that's trying to help and solve the problem. So I'd like to hear kind of what the code enforcement's attitude is towards the whole project, and that might be helpful for all of us.
Thanks, Ryan. And Jeff?
You say code enforcement. I want to confirm that's Pierce County Planning and Public Works code enforcement, not City of Tacoma or City of Puyallup or any other jurisdiction.
Correct,
That
Jeff.
is-
That's
yeah, that's correct.
Pierce County. And then Ryan, just so you know, it has been for the most part, all the contacts that we've had, like I said, the one instance with one of the churches that's already established was good, but I believe that I'm not sure that the civic locations part has been discussed, or because it's my understanding that that was part of the reason why they sent it back and got it redone was, and that they signed off, was to add not all civic sites, but 4. They put a limit on 4. So the information that was received by this person regarding their site, which is civic site, it would be determined to be a civic site, was that it was going to be a little bit more difficult to qualify it because the ordinance was only for church parking lots. So that's where I'm saying is there's a disconnect, maybe, at least is how I read it. I don't know.
And Paula, real quickly, can you make sure you keep us updated since we're funding that project?
Absolutely.
I'm very
Absolutely.
aware that our county executive, Executive Dan Meyer, is fully supportive of this program, and that we have a contract for this process and this program. So if you could keep us informed, we do have a relationship with the Planning and Public Works Department, which is where code enforcement falls under.
Sure. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
And
Yeah,
just to
thanks.
chime in, Jeff, Director Moss is aware of it and is talking to code enforcement. So there's some communication happening above
Great.
my level.
Okay, great.
Thanks for that. That's very substantive, and let us know, Paula, what you hear back. That'd be helpful. And again, a reminder for everyone: if you want to hear more about safe parking, you can attend the Safe Sites for All committee meetings. Those happen Mondays at noon on Zoom. So, any other coalition committee updates? Don't see. Yeah, I don't know that we were going to have any others. Rosemary, go ahead.
I'll just make the point that our governance work group is now creating an about us list of information to put on the webpage. Many websites have that, and ours is sort of expecting us all to know whatever we need to know when we land there. So we'll be bringing that forward in the next few weeks after we bring it to the steering committee and get feedback on what it says and make sure it reflects the conversations and principles we've been working with as a group. So that'll come up.
Thank you, Rosemary. And the governance work group is another meeting that if you have an interest in that sort of thing, if you have an interest in what goes on to the website and the About Us page that's being created, that link to the meeting is on the pchomeless.org website. So we have an opportunity to have a little bit of time for any good trouble announcements from folks. Anything that folks would like to share with the 54 other people who are in the room? Well, 53 other if you're speaking. Zoe, go ahead.
Yeah, I put this in the chat, but just for anyone that missed it, Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective is organizing a wholesale order of fire extinguishers for distribution at camps. We're working with some other mutual aid groups in Seattle and several places to get as big of an order as we can and the best price we can. So far, we're ordering about 20 for Tacoma. If anyone is interested in ordering some for a group they're part of or putting some money towards that, we'd greatly appreciate it. Hope everyone is doing good.
Great, thank you. And Ryan, your hand's up as well.
I just wanted to give a shout out for the monthly get together last night. I know we got out of the practice during COVID, but if anybody's new and doesn't know who all these people are, it's a great networking experience. Even if you don't have a particular agenda or anything you wanted to come and learn and see, you will pick up an amazing amount of things just from osmosis and meet some really great people. So don't be shy. First week of every first Thursday of every month, come out next time. You'll enjoy it.
Yay, osmosis. Rosemary. Yeah, you're
Okay.
muted. There you go.
I work with New Connections, and this is just an announcement about an upcoming fundraiser we have. During COVID, a lot of people didn't wear very many fashion accessories and got used to perhaps dressing much more informally, but we have a thing we're calling Fabulous Finds. It's a fashion accessories on a budget. So we'll have all kinds of stuff that we're going to in the third week of August, the 19th and 20th. It's like a grand flea market, but we call it something a little fancier. So we'll be sending out a message to the listserv about this as an event that really helps with our work, which helps women coming out of incarceration. And you might be interested in stopping by. It'll be at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church, just on I Street there, a little north of Division. And we'll let you know more about it, but you might put it on your calendar if you're interested in such things. That's August 19th, and that's a Friday, and August 20th, which is a Saturday.
Thank you, Rosemary. Anyone else with things they would like to share with the group? Opportunities like that, upcoming events? Jay.
This is a really unique one. If any of you have people that are on Apple Health or Molina in particular, but I'm sure that there's other programs through other carriers. They offer free smartphones. They offer behavioral health services 24 hours a day. They offer video chat for medical and health services. And a lot of people just don't know about it because it comes in a pamphlet to your house. And if you don't have an address, you don't know about it. So if any of your people have those services or in that range, it might be an idea to look into that stuff and let them know about it, because free phones are always useful.
Thank you, Jay. And anyone else with items for the good of the order? All right. So we always like to create a space at the end of these meetings for folks to share any success stories they would like to share. So I don't know if anybody has anything to share this week, but I'd like to open the floor for a few moments and see if somebody does. All right. So I can't believe it. We are actually done a little bit early this week. So yay to extra time in your day. I hope everyone has a safe weekend. Stay cool. Thankfully, it won't be quite as warm as it was last week. But appreciate in advance the help of all of those who are going to go out and distribute water this weekend. And again, one more call for if anybody wants to stay on past this meeting, we will have a small group of us planning for upcoming meetings of the coalition. If you have ideas, besides what was shared by Timothy earlier, please consider hanging out. Otherwise, I wish everybody a happy and safe weekend, and we will see you all back here at the same bat time, same bat channel next week. Bye-bye, everybody.